Before moving to Shenzhen, I never really understood why someone would travel to another city just for a meal. This weekend, I think I'm starting to understand it. I'm Eric, and this weekend, I'm heading to Chaoshan to meet up with a friend. Chaoshan isn't actually a city. It's a region made up of 3 neighboring cities that share a similar culture and food tradition. It's a little over 300 kilometers from Shenzhen, and the high-speed train gets there in about an hour and a half. Funny enough, that's about the same amount of time I spend commuting to work every day. Once the train left Shenzhen, the view outside started to change. The skyscrapers slowly disappeared, replaced by farmland and rice fields stretching into the distance. Working in a big city like Shenzhen, life always feels fast-paced. By the weekend, shopping malls are packed, restaurants have long lines, and everything still feels busy. Sometimes, spending a day or two in a smaller city nearby feels like a nice change of pace. I always feel train tickets from Shenzhen are a little more expensive than in other cities. This one costs me about $20. Maybe I've been spending too much time around office buildings and concrete, but looking out the window made me feel a little more relaxed. Before I knew it, I was there. As soon as I got off the train, my friend sent me a message. He and his wife had already ordered food and were waiting for me at the restaurant. Time to book a ride. The restaurant was about 29 kilometers away. The ride would cost around $8 and take about 30 minutes. Ever since ride-hailing apps became popular, I almost never take traditional taxis anymore. My friend works in Guangzhou. He finished work yesterday and drove to Chaoshan that same night. I was still working late, so I had to make the trip this morning instead. By the time I reached the pickup area, my driver had just arrived too.
0016对
This is Chaoshan Station. Chaoshan is probably best known for beef hot pot and raw marinated seafood, so deciding what to eat for lunch wasn't exactly difficult. We went straight for beef hot pot. The restaurant has been around for years, and it's much bigger than I expected. Time to finally meet up with my friend. I hadn't eaten anything all morning, and by this point I was starving. Chaoshan beef hot pot uses a clear broth made from beef bones. A lot of people drink a bowl of soup before they even start cooking the meat. The beef is sliced fresh and served by cut. Around 8 seconds in the pot is all it takes. It still looked a little undercooked to me. But it was incredibly tender, with a really rich beef flavor. My friend told me to save some room. We still had a lot more eating to do. After hot pot, we headed to a dessert shop. A recent movie made this area much more popular, and there seemed to be tourists everywhere. Luckily, my friend is the kind of person who can talk to anyone. A few minutes later, we were sharing a table with 2 women who were also visiting from out of town. This was my first time seriously trying to film a travel vlog. A lot of the time I got caught up eating and talking, and by the time I remembered to film something, the moment was already gone. So I never actually filmed the dessert. All I got was this photo. After hot pot, it was exactly what I wanted. We still have dinner ahead of us, so we're just spending some time exploring Shantou. Shantou is probably the best known city in the Chaoshan region. The streets aren't crowded, and nobody seems to be in much of a hurry. People are just walking around, chatting, and taking photos. I really like that slower pace. It feels completely different from Shenzhen. After spending enough time in big cities, it's easy to feel like they all start looking the same. Shopping malls, office towers, and endless traffic. Here, even finding a tall building isn't easy. We pass a local market. It's already afternoon, so some vendors are starting to pack up, and a lot of the produce is already gone. It reminds me of being a kid. I honestly can't remember the last time I walked through a market like this. Most of the time, I just order everything on my phone and wait for it to show up at my door. Up ahead, there's a cluster of old buildings. I have no idea how old they are. But something about them makes me stop and take a closer look. There are quite a few tourists taking photos nearby. I decide to go inside.
我靠，你这个跟鬼脸。
The place is dark. Walking through it feels a little like being in an adventure movie, maybe even a horror movie. In the old houses nearby, plenty of local residents still live here today. Deep in one of the alleys, I notice a staircase. Something about it makes me want to see where it goes, so I head upstairs. Turns out it's the entrance to a residential courtyard. Several apartment buildings surround a small shared space. There are plants everywhere and laundry hanging outside. It looks a little messy, but full of life. And somehow, I really like it. Dinner came around a lot sooner than I expected. There's no menu here. You just tell the owner what you want to eat. I left the ordering to my friend. My job was simply to sit back and enjoy it. Honestly, I wasn't even hungry, but
我说我不能评判它跟我原来的那个怎么对比。相不。
we somehow still ended up with a table full of food. A meal like this would cost quite a bit in Shenzhen. We'd probably never order this much. But here, it works out to about $10 per person. Most of the time, we're all busy with our own lives in different cities. Weekends are one of the few chances we get to sit down, have a drink, and catch up. After dinner, we headed to the coast. Out in the water is a structure known as the Sea Castle. From a distance, it almost looks like something from a movie. A lot of people come here just to take photos. I stood by the water for a while. I wasn't really thinking about anything. It just felt nice to be there. After dark, we could still see lightning flashing in the distance. I thought the day was pretty much over. Apparently, my friend had other plans. He definitely wasn't taking me back to rest. This trip is turning into a serious weight gain program. I wasn't hungry at all, but everything looked way too good to pass up. So, here we go again. Funny enough, I was the one saying I wasn't hungry, and somehow I ended up eating the most. The sound of heavy rain woke me up the next morning. My friend had booked a 2-bedroom Airbnb and they were still asleep. So I stepped out onto the balcony by myself and looked out at the ocean. The rain kept getting heavier, The sound of the rain blended together with the waves. It was surprisingly relaxing. In a little while, we'd all be heading back to our own cities and our normal lives. On the way back, we passed a beach called Romantic Beach. To be honest, I didn't find it very romantic. If anything, it felt a little lonely. After all, I was the only one there by myself. Our last meal of the trip ended up being at a roadside food stall. The owner was squatting by a tiny stove, cooking right on the sidewalk. Tables and chairs were set up along the street. Most of the customers seemed to be locals. An elderly man was clearing tables beside us. He moved slowly, but he took his time with everything. For some reason, that moment really stayed with me. My friend ordered another huge spread of food. Even the owner kept telling us it was way too much. But by the time I remembered to film it, most of it was already gone. Looks like I spent these 2 days doing a lot more eating than filming. Tomorrow, it's back to work.